Hi everyone, it's Kimber, the Study Abroad Specialist, and in today's video, we are going to be discussing 3 of the major downsides of summer study abroad programs. So if you're brand new to this channel, welcome. I'm so excited that you are here. I help high school students, college students, and graduate students all around the world plan out their entire study abroad experience. So on this channel, we talk about everything from study abroad programs to study abroad visas, how to survive while you're living study abroad, how to make friends when you're study abroad, basically everything study abroad as it says in the name of the channel. I did want to point out that before we dive into the topic, I do have a freebie for you. So if you have not had a chance to download my free e-guide, Finding Your Perfect Study Abroad Program, please definitely do that. It is linked below. This is going to be really useful for you if you are just getting started with your study abroad journey in terms of searching for a program, or even if you have a program, but you're still looking for a few more programs to add to apply to before you make your final decision. So definitely go ahead and check that out and download it. It is completely free to you. So the first downside of summer study abroad programs is typically that they are a lot shorter. So you will find as you're going through and doing your research, even in the e-guide, you will see that I list that out, where for longer semester programs, so if you're going in the fall or in the spring, you will find that programs will last 8 weeks, 9 weeks, 12 weeks, sometimes even up to 15 weeks. And of course, if you are applying for a full degree program abroad, this does not necessarily apply to you in that way because you know that it's going to be longer. But particularly for summer students, I think that one of the things that I know that a lot of the students I work with and that I advise find that is unsettling to them is that they never feel settled in. So by the time that they actually have gone through all the work of applying and getting in, they finally travel to the destination, and then they look up and 4 weeks later it's time to go, and they didn't even feel. I've had students tell me I didn't even have time to feel homesick, which again is not something you necessarily want to feel, but I understand within the context of what they're saying is that they didn't really feel settled in. They didn't feel like they got the full experience of wherever they were going. And so this is definitely something to think about if you have the option between summer study abroad and other times of study abroad. For some students out there, you definitely don't have the option, and we'll talk about that later. But if you do have the option, you may just want to consider that during the summertime, it is going to be a lot different in terms of what you can actually accomplish within your program. So you have to keep in mind that classes are going to be a lot more focused, which is a great thing. So they tend to be much more intensive and much more focused, but that it's going to happen at a rapid pace. And so you just have to be ready for that. The other thing to point out too, that can be sort of a downside on the same point, is that a lot of summer study abroad programs tend to be multi-city. And so that sort of plays into the first point of you may be going to 3 different cities throughout this summer program, which is excellent in terms of just your experience and getting to travel. But you also may never feel settled in it. Maybe by the time that you are, let's say you're doing a 3 location Europe study abroad program. And so you go to Germany, and then you're in Germany for 2 weeks. And then by the time that you get settled into Germany, you're headed over to Italy. And then by the time that you get settled into Italy, you have your last week in London. So you're like, I have no idea what's going on. So I understand why some students opt in for summer study abroad programs. I have done lots of videos on those. I will link the playlist of that above. However, I do think that it's definitely something to consider if you are someone who you want to feel more settled in, more like you have sort of a home base, that summer study abroad may not be the best option for you. So the next downside, and I think this is one that a lot of times people don't even really talk about, even though they sort of understand it, but you have to keep in mind that when you are studying abroad in the summertime, it is the summer for most people around the world. And so whether they are, let's say, coming from a country, they live in a country where it may technically be winter. I know that, for example, if you live in Australia, when most people are in summertime, you guys are in winter over there. But just keeping in mind that a lot of people travel within those popular summer months of June, July, August, even up to September. And so what that means is if you are studying abroad practically anywhere in the world during the summertime specifically, that you are going to get to experience a local culture, but it's going to be much more influenced by tourism. We all know that during the summer months, that is when tourism is at its height. And so what that means is it's going to look a lot different than it would if you were going through, let's say, like a normal time of year, although that's not as relevant anymore, but just keeping in mind that we all know that there are peak seasons of travel. So for example, if you are living in a place between September and about, maybe November, you're not going to see as many tourists. You get to experience a lot more of the local culture, meet a lot more of the local people. Whereas in the summer months, the people that live there, they're often gone somewhere else. And the people who are coming in and that you will see on the day-to-day basis are tourists. Now, for a lot of people, that is not the biggest downside to them. They feel like just being in the location is enough. However, I do know, for example, myself included, and a lot of the students that I work with, that one of the things that they want to do when they study abroad, and it totally makes sense, is they want to be able to experience local culture and to be able to mingle with locals and have an opportunity to meet locals. And it sort of feels a little bit depressing when you get to a place and you're like, hey, these are just tourists here. Well, I'm happy they're here. They're keeping everything going economically. I just feel like this is a bit depressing because the locals are all gone somewhere else for the summer. So I would just say, to sort of combat that, is that there are still ways to get involved if you want to do local things. So I always recommend that, keeping in mind that obviously all locals are not going to be gone, but I always like to recommend to my students to get involved with local things. So maybe take a class that is taught by a local, maybe a cooking class, or you could take a dance class, or you could just do a side language class, whatever that's going to look like. Particularly in the summertime, you will find that no matter where you're traveling, there's a lot more sort of one-off things. So it could be where there's just a 3-week intensive class that you can take on top of what you're doing for your actual study abroad. This is something that would just be specialized, that locals can sign up for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever that's like. And of course, a lot of young people out there are going to get a chance to meet locals anyway when they go out to bars and to pubs and things like that. However, I just always like to highlight the fact that it's going to look a lot different than what you would think. So I know that if you're like me, like most people, you do a little bit of romanticizing. So you've gone online and you've looked at different pictures and you've started to learn different things about the place that you're going. However, just understanding that the landscape and the overall population of who will be where you are during your summer study abroad is going to look different than if you were going through the semester. The last downside that I wanted to point out of summer study abroad programs is that they often conflict with other opportunities. And I know that this can be a bit of an oxymoron, because for some students, the only reason that they choose summer study abroad is because that's the only time they do it, because it conflicts. But I know that, for example, for a lot of American-based students, for a lot of Canadian-based students, and a lot of students in different countries around the world as well. But the reason why I mention it is because in the US and in Canada, there tend to be a lot more stricter lines between universities, like we are out for the summer during this time and this time. Whereas I know with a lot of other schools during the summertime, you may be working on other things like dissertations or whatever. So that doesn't really matter as much where you're from, but just keeping in mind that if you are doing a summer program, that maybe during the summer you need to fit in extra classes to work towards your degree, and the ones that you're doing during study abroad are not going to be working for you. Maybe it's going to be where you are starting to get to that place within your academic career where you want to look for internships or part-time work that's going to be useful towards your degree. And if you're doing study abroad, you're not going to be able to do both of those things potentially. You might be able to if it's short enough and you can fit it in. But I know that a lot of the students that I work with tend to struggle with this as well when they're trying to decide, can I do a summer study abroad, or should I just wait and do maybe in the fall or the spring, because I have a lot of I want to do during the summer, and I don't want to just have where, let's say you're going off to France for 4 weeks, but then by the time you come back home, there's not enough room in between going back to school and being able to do an internship or do a fellowship or whatever that's going to look like. So I know that a lot of students wrestle with that. My recommendation for that would definitely be to try and find a happy balance, first of all. So for starters, can you do an internship abroad? There's lots of study abroad programs out there, particularly for the independent organized that I talk about in the e-guide, that offer internships abroad. That could be a great way to get in both opportunities during the summer, because you get a chance to do the internship, but you also get the study abroad experience. This is something that works very, very well. This is something that I did when I was in undergrad, not during the summer, but I still had an opportunity to do it. And it was a nice dichotomy of going through the traditional study abroad experience during a semester, but also doing an internship as well. And I had an entirely different experience than a lot of students that were there just for the traditional study abroad portion of the program. Could you do something like that? Could you do a shorter study abroad program? So a lot of study abroad programs that take place in the summer are just going to be maybe 3 weeks. They're going to be very intensive, but then it could be something where maybe you do a midsummer program. So you may start out with your internship or your part-time job or whatever you want to pursue in the summer, let's say at the end of May. So that's when a lot of students around the world get out of school, particularly at the college level, where they're going to be finishing up their semester or their quarter. And so you go ahead and you do that, you work that through June, and then you ask for 3 weeks off to go do this study abroad program wherever, or 2 weeks off. They really vary, so it doesn't really matter as much for this instance, but you ask for that particular time off. And then on the flip side, once you come back home, you're able to pick up where you left off. There are some opportunities like that. I know that particularly if you are doing something that is more research-based within an internship, or you are not necessarily working with a huge team where you have to collaborate and contribute to things, that there may be an opportunity to do that. So I would say that try and find a happy balance if you can. If you are not able to, then we're going to have to think about some other ideas. So I would say that your next best bet would be to consider doing a study abroad program that is in a semester length. So maybe you're not going to go during the summer. You're going to say, actually, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and go in the fall. That's going to work better for me. But you really have to just think about it, because I know that a lot of students feel that summer is going to be the best time to do it, but it doesn't work for everyone. So definitely consider what your goals are, what's going to work best for your schedule realistically as you're going through and trying to find a program. Hopefully it's going to be in the summertime, but if not, we want to make sure that we find something for you that's going to work well so that you can get a great study abroad experience. Okay, and so I hope that this video was helpful for you. I know that it can be very stressful as you are on this path to beginning to plan your study abroad experience, and particularly for students who are trying to decide which semester, which quarter, when they should go study abroad, that this is where you get stuck often. And so if you are interested in summer study abroad specifically, I want you to have the tools that you need to make the best decision. And that includes talking about some of the more downside parts of things. So I hope this was helpful for you. If you have not already, please subscribe to the channel. I release videos every single Friday and sometimes on Wednesdays and Thursdays as well. Also, as mentioned in the opener, please download the free e-guide. It is going to be very useful for you as you get started with planning this experience. Also, too, if you already know what your study abroad plans are, share them below. I would love to hear them. They're always helpful as well to the audience here. It means so much to be able to keep that conversation going, because there are always new programs popping up, and there are always different things that students are up to that I've never even heard of. So I would love for you to share that. I look forward to seeing you in the next video very soon.